Why can't Palestine become a UN protectorate? Like Kosovo. Israel's policy blockading Gaza and the settlers in the West Bank is unjust and self-destructive. At the same time, at least with Gaza I can fully comprehend why Israel needs to act the way they do. Otherwise, with Hamas in power, they'd immediately use any opportunity to arm to themselves and kill more Israelis. With Iran's support, I'm skeptical that Palestinians in Gaza can, in the short term, be given sovereignty without immense risk and danger to Jews. What is stopping the UN from taking over, at least for a few decades, and reevaluate the situation in, say, 2040? First, you have to find a country to control the force that is 1. Acceptable to Hamas, Fatah and the Israelis. 2. Able to coordinate a divisional force that can conduct effective CIMIC in a non-permissive environment without going all mile on the locals, and 3. Willing to endure years, if not decades, of their children coming home in body bags. There's only one country that could pull it off. But there's no way the Americans are going near the Levant since 1983. The UN is great for countries wanting to make loud statements, but very light on the follow-through. What's the UN gonna do? If they go in and try to remove Hamas, it will be the exact situation as right now. If they don't remove Hamas, you now have created a safe haven for Hamas to train their fighters and build their rockets to attack Israel and the whole world. You mean like mandatory Palestine? Who would administer it? The British abandoned it because they foresaw the intense conflict within the population. A coalition of powers could establish something, and probably should in terms of the greater good, but it would be rejected by most of the people living in the wider region and be seen as a return of Western imperialism. Have to wonder whether provoking direct intervention isn't actually the goal of Hamas. As we've already witnessed, popular opinion already swing from condemning the attacks to condemning the reaction to them. The UN doesn't have a military, much less one capable of effectively quelling terrorist insurgents largely supported by the population around them. And the history of UN peacekeepers in a conflict is, well, there's a lot of running involved. Hamas and Fatah would have to give up power, while Israel loses control. Also, at least one of the members would veto this for one reason or another. The US, because they take Israel's point of view. China, to appease the Muslim world. So it would block any deal that ensures the existence of Israel and that the US is a bit more distracted. Russia, to not set a precedent for its republics. France and Britain would do their own thing, pretty similar to the US. Doesn't Egypt blockade Gaza as well at the Rafah border? Even before October 7th. How would the UN stop Hamas from sending rockets or murder squads into Israel? If it could, then I think it would work. But unfortunately it can't. Because it doesn't actually solve the problem. The UN takes over. Then what? Hamas in Gaza keeps firing rockets at Israel. The only way to stop them and take direct administration is to invade. Literally what Israel's doing right now. Not much changes besides maybe who's doing the invading. And even then, who else is volunteering to send in an army and take control of Gaza from Hamas? No one except Israel is willing to take responsibility for that mess. So literally nothing would change. I literally don't know why Gaza doesn't return to Egypt, considering that's who Israel took it from in 1967. They Palestinians PLO were offered a two-state solution and they did not want to. Now they have Hamas and Hamas is even less interested in a peaceful solution of the conflict. In such a scenario they would need to give up power, which they certainly do not want, and kicking them out of power. Well, let's say that's what Israel is trying, although IMHO not succeeding. I think about Israel-Gaza situation more like Germany allies at the end of World War II. It is clear there is almost full-scale war between those two nations. Israel has clear plan to rescue all hostages, but now it seems like an excuse to pacify whole Gaza. It is shocking to me why Gaza PPL have not surrendered yet. Normal person would definitely surrendered forces to save civilians. Since Palestinians still fight, they must face consequences. There is no other way. Kosovo doesn't have a long history of terrorism or refusing to negotiate or advocating for the genocide of their enemy. Pretty much that simple. Question: is Egypt's blockade of Gaza also unjust? And where is your criticism of them? Nothing would change. UN is completely ineffectual, and we'd just see a bunch of UN people being taken hostage and turned into bargaining chips. Because Hamas. I just want to point out how absurd this part seems to me. Israel's policy blockading Gaza. The attack on the 7th of October proved, beyond reasonable doubt, why Israel needed a blockade all these years. Yet Israel still provided electricity, water, healthcare and jobs to thousands of Gazans. In spite of the waves of suicide bombs, kidnappings, stabbings and shootings, and thousands of rockets. Surely now the world can see what Israel has been dealing with all along. Mainly because Israel, with U.S. support, would not permit that, because it would bring an end to acquisition of more Arab land for settlement. None of the comments so far address the most important issue, which is where the borders will be. In the West Bank, hard borders would require the removal of settlers, which Israel will never consent to. In Gaza, 80% of the population are refugees or descended from refugees of the Nakba, making their displacement formally permanent by drawing the border at the current perimeter of Gaza. Would never be accepted by any political entity within Gaza and would require compensation from Israel, which will not be forthcoming. Israel should just let Gaza be its own country. But if they attack, then Israel has a right to defend, invariably leading to civilian death. The UN is corrupt, weak, feckless, arrogant, and very easily pushed around by Hamas. I wouldn't trust them with a herd of goats. The US wants total control in order to extract the natural gas and oil on the coast. Anything that is not obliteration or complete takeover is not an option for them. Because UN cannot enforce anything. UN had the mandate to disarm Hezbollah and did not. UN had the mandate to prevent Egypt from attacking Israel and did not. And now Iran is the chair of UNHRC. Kosovo is a NATO-US protectorate meant to increase US hegemony in Europe. That would definitely solve the short-term problem of violent incursions into Israel and Israeli retaliation, including the blockade. However, it wouldn't solve the fundamental disagreement, where Israel wants to continue to exist as a Jewish ethno-state, and Palestinians, for the most part, don't want a separate Palestinian state, but the entire area, as you say, possibly with a few decades of UN control. The situation could be re-evaluated. The problem is convincing the UN to take this on. I don't see that happening. 2 words: US veto. As many have mentioned, there are Security Council issues that make this difficult to start with. But also what any resolution that passed would entail is Arab states organizing and sending troops and resources into Gaza. They aren't interested in doing that. That would require UNSC to work. In the present circumstances, not a chance. Well, Kosovo wanted the protection of USA, so there is your answer. Foreign Affairs article?